I just want to mention the clean energy standard really quickly because President Obama talked about supporting an 80% clean energy standard by 2035 in his 2011 State of the Union address. And that basically means that a state or a utility would produce a certain percentage of clean energy by some particular year, in the case of President Obama, 2035. Unfortunately, clean, under President Obama's definition and under many definitions of this proposal, includes nuclear, coal with carbon capture, and natural gas, and renewable energy, which is basically the kitchen sink, and you would end up where we are now. It's a very silly proposal, but it did have legs for, well, not that legs, but it had some momentum for a little bit in terms of at least people talking about it. I think that it's pretty clear that it can't pass either the Senate or the House, so it's not happening. The more worrisome bill that actually, although difficult to pass, is the loan guarantees on steroids bill called the Clean Energy Deployment Administration. And the purpose of CEDA is a really great purpose. It's to promote access to affordable financing for accelerated and widespread deployment of clean energy, energy infrastructure, energy efficiency, and manufacturing technologies. Great purpose. The problem is that nuclear power and coal are defined as clean energy technologies. And even more problematic is the way the bill is written. It allows for unlimited nuclear loan guarantees and fails to actually require that projects reduce CO2 emissions. Now, obviously, the whole reason that nuclear is in the mix is because it's supposed to be a low carbon emitter, but the way the program is actually structured, nuclear and coal would have access to unlimited loan guarantees, while renewables, on the other hand, would actually be very limited by the amount of money in the bank. Why is nuclear unlimited? The main reason is because they pay their own fee. So as long as they're paying the fee, you can give out a loan guarantee. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the fee is 1% or 1/2 of 1%, as long as they're paying the fee. Renewables, on the other hand, have not historically been able to pay that fee, and taxpayers have been paying that fee. So that means whatever capital is in the bank has to pay that fee, and the proposal is for $10 billion in the bank to pay these fees. And that limits how much loan guarantees can go out the door. But if the industry is actually paying its own fee, you can give out as much as you want. And with nuclear loan utilities, they tend to be larger and more able to pay these fees. Renewables industry tends to be smaller and unable to pay those fees. Hope that's clear. So that's a big deal. So the bill allows one technology to get the lion's share. It allows DOE to waive. This is a big change from last year's version or 2 years ago version of the bill. It allows the DOE to waive independent credit rating of the applicant of the project. So if the political pressure is on to give out these loan guarantees for nuclear, which it certainly is in the Senate, the Secretary of Energy can waive any kind of independent credit rating, which, as we can see from all the downgrades that are happening across the board in utilities that want to build, they would have to waive that credit down. They'd have to waive those credit downgrades and ignore that, basically put blinders on and pretend that that doesn't exist and give out these loan guarantees anyway. This provision was clearly written for the nuclear industry because they've had a really hard time keeping the fees low and getting through the process of the loan guarantees. It also includes, the bill also includes nuclear manufacturing and now small modular reactors, which has become a really exciting and new phenomenon for the nuclear industry. So why does the nuclear industry have so much support in Congress? Because it seems a bit, especially post-Fukushima, it seems over the top. Well, the main reason is that the nuclear industry has spent $600 million on lobbying and nearly $63 million on campaign contributions over the past decade. And this does not include TV advertisements and other things like that. This is just what they've given to Congress. It's still a lot of money. They've really focused on giving increased amounts to Democrats to try to make it a bipartisan issue, get bipartisan support. They got support from 21 unions by promising them union jobs. They recruited new champions, particularly Senator Murkowski, who is from Alaska, but is the ranking member on the Energy Committee. Alaska will not benefit from any of these nuclear reactors, but yet she's become one of the most vocal supporters for nuclear power. And then finally, which they've done in the CEDA proposal, is package nuclear subsidies with renewable subsidies, so people who like renewables think that they have to eat the nuclear subsidies in order to get what they want. So that's been a very successful strategy. So all of this is on the federal level, and all of it has been slowed down because there haven't been very many loan guarantees authorized, only the 18.5. So what the industry has done is gone to states and said, all right, we need ratepayers to pay in advance of construction, in fact in advance of licensing of new reactors, to pay for construction. So even before a project is licensed, ratepayers in some states are paying for these nuclear reactors. So the states in which this is happening, the phrase is either called advanced cost recovery, or it's also known as construction work in progress, or QIP. And states where this is happening, there are 6 states that have passed QIP laws: Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, and South Carolina. Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina and South Carolina right now, those 4 states, are actually requiring their ratepayers to pay for reactors that will not be built before 2020. So right now, people are paying more for their electricity. And it's especially ironic in states like Florida, where there's such an elderly population. Those people probably will never get 1 electron out of that reactor if it's ever built, because they won't be here. It's a very aging population in Florida. The estimate is that by 2020, the electricity bills are going to be $50 more a month to pay for these reactors that have yet to be licensed or constructed. So this is just an enormous, enormous subsidy. It's a tax-free loan, interest-free loan, I guess we should say, an interest-free loan from ratepayers to the utility to maybe someday build these reactors. And on top of that, if these reactors are canceled, the ratepayers will not get that money back. So it is a real deal for the utilities. And there's been several states in which there's been an effort to try to pass similar QIP laws. Mid-America currently is trying to get a QIP law in Iowa. Ben and I have been working very hard on that, trying to prevent that from happening. Ameren in Missouri is looking for a mini QIP. They tried in other years to get a QIP law and failed. So they're looking to just get money for part of the permitting process paid for by utilities. And we see it as a slippery slope. You start paying that, and then you start, well, we can pay the next bit, and we can pay the next bit, and before you know it, you've got a full-blown QIP. So we're opposing that as well. And then Duke Energy in North Carolina is looking for a super QIP, which is a better QIP than the one they have from their perspective, or worse one from our perspective. So a lot of the fights that have been national have shifted to the state level because they haven't been able to get from the federal government what they need. So the poor ratepayers are being stomped on. So the bottom line is that nuclear power can't compete. They just can't compete with the rising, they're dramatically increasing costs and the decreasing costs of competition, particularly natural gas, which has its own environmental issues, but the reality is it's cheap right now. But also renewables and efficiency are extremely, there are lots of renewables that are cheaper than nuclear, and efficiency is 3 cents per kilowatt hour. There's also, since the recession, been a decreased demand growth of electricity, which has really hit states such as Michigan, where they're talking about building 2 reactors. There's no justification. There's no one to sell that electricity to. They don't have the demand, and they're not going to in the next 10 years. So it's not just the folks who've been working on the public interest side who are saying this, that nuclear doesn't make sense economically. Constellation, which pulled out of the Calvert Cliffs proposal in Maryland, said that persistently low natural gas prices, the inability of the U.S. to pass climate legislation, and less than ideal long and short-term power prices makes nuclear in Maryland impossible. Exelon's CEO, John Rowe, said that as long as natural gas is anywhere near its current price, you can't build a nuclear power plant in a power market, which is Texas or Maryland. And he also concluded recently, just 2 or 3 days before Fukushima, that he went to the American Enterprise Institute and said Congress should not expand the nuclear loan guarantee program beyond the $18.5 billion already allocated. This is huge because Exelon is the largest owner of nuclear power plants in the country. So, this is Exelon's view. I'm going to close up real soon. The Exelon's view of carbon abatement options in 2008. The big blue, is what nuclear was in 2008. If you go to the next slide. You can see how much it shifted over and how much more expensive it is just in 2 years. And this is Exelon's perspective. So it's a really big shift. And that's why Exelon isn't building any new reactors. It's not just deregulated states. FPNL, Florida Power and Light, president also said that they may never build in Florida. This is the state where people are paying for advanced cost recovery, but yet they're saying that they may never build. Progress Energy in North Carolina says it might abandon its plans to build Sharon Harris. NEI went to a big conference overseas and said plans for new reactors are delayed due to low gas prices and lack of electricity demand. So what do we do? If we don't build nuclear, how are we going to meet our energy needs? How are we going to address climate change? Well, this is another slide by Mark Cooper that shows what you would do in terms of if you wanted to address climate change, meet energy needs in the cheapest way that made sense so you can pay the least amount to get the carbon out of the environment or to not put carbon into the environment. This is what you would do. This is the cost curve. So if you can see, it's kind of a bit fuzzy, I apologize, but fossil fuel, CCS, and nuclear are way, way, way out there. Sometime maybe in 2030, and we can't predict. No one can predict at this point whether we need nuclear in 2030. In fact, I think it's pretty clear that the technologies for renewables and efficiency are moving incredibly fast, and unlikely we're going to need nuclear to keep the lights on and to deal with climate change. But no one can guarantee that, and right now it's very, very, very clear that we do not want to start with the most expensive option, which means that you pay the maximum amount per carbon to get the carbon, to not put the carbon into the environment. You want to start with efficiency, cogeneration, geothermal, wind, biomass, etc. And I think that's my last slide.